Hello, book connectors. Welcome back to the Book Connection. Visitors, should you happen upon the channel, feel free to join us. We'd love to have you here. Hello, book connectors. Welcome back to the channel. I am your host, Blue-Eyed Black Devil, and this time I am here with a video for the book I Know I've Been Changed by Rashonda Tate Billingsley. She's one of my favorite authors, and this is one of my favorite books of hers. Now, although the overall subject matter may not be a laughing matter to a lot of people, please let's just take the book that there are some surface areas. There are some things in here that we know aren't funny. But to tell you the truth, that's one of the reasons I like her works, because she seems to be masterful in evenly distributing moments of comic relief throughout the book. Like I say, the subject matter overall is not very funny. But sometimes that's where we find some of the funniest things we look back on, as time passes. And so, with all of that being said, here we go. Well, now, this really is the story of a family of children. There were 4 children. They lived with their mother, Rose. Rose she wasn't the motherly type at all. So much so that she pulled a Joe Jackson, Michael Jackson's dad, where he would not allow his children to call him father. They had to call him by his name, and this is the same in this case. The children only could call her by her name, Rose. Now, they lived in Lake Charles, Louisiana. Now, it's not clear for some reason, even though this is like my 3rd time reading this book, I'm still not sure if the man of these children was the father of all 4, or if he was like the father of one or 2 of the children. But either way it goes, he's deceased. And he is deceased because his best friend killed him at the pool hall one night. Now that he's deceased, the man ends up taking up with Rose. He tells Rose, after the dad is out of the picture, that he doesn't want any children. He don't have anything to do with children. So what does she do? She pawns them off on her mother. So she gets up and she takes the children to a place they know absolutely nothing about. At the time it happened, her oldest daughter, Shondella, was 13. Middle daughter, Raydella, was 8. And then they had a set of twin siblings, Justin and Jasmine, and they were not quite 1 year old. She uproots them and moves them to live with her mother, who lives in Sweet Polk, Arkansas. Now, I don't know if that place exists or not. I did try to halfway Google and see what comes up, but I really didn't see anything showing that it was. But anyway, this lady drives them there and basically deserts them. She leaves them in the middle of the night at this gas station. Now, I guess someone had told her that they would come and get the kids, because when they got there, they were there for like 4 or 5 hours. And then well after it got dark, maybe like between 10 and 11 at night, she gets the bright idea to get out, make a phone call, comes back to the car crying. I guess whoever she called said they weren't going to come and get the kids. We don't know. But at some point, we do know that it was well after dark. They're on a dirt road in the middle of God only knows where to those little bitty kids. And she tells them, don't ever let anyone tell you that I don't love you. And so Shondella and Raydella, oh gosh, these names. Ooh. They are the oldest. And so Raydella is trying to understand why she was doing this. And so Shondella was like, it's because of Sam. I heard him tell you he didn't want kids, and you're going to get rid of us because he doesn't want kids. Rose never denied it or confirmed it. She just kept telling them to hush and said, your grandmother is going to come and get you. She says she won't, but she will. And she just pulls off. Shondella had one baby on her hip, and Raydella had the other baby. Eventually, grandmother does come and pick them up. She's affectionately known as Mama T. Mama T takes them to her house, and that's where they lived. The next time they saw their mother, Rose, Raydella was 15. Shondella was roughly 23, with 4 babies of her own. Now, the twins, Justin and Jasmine. Justin had leukemia. We don't know if he was born with it or if he developed it shortly after birth. But he does have it. And when Rose comes back for the first time, 7 years after dumping them off on her mom, she notices that she doesn't see Jasmine anywhere. And so Shondella was mad that she showed up, period. She didn't have anything for her for what she did. And so Raydella ends up telling her that Jasmine ended up dying in a house fire. And they just couldn't understand why Rose didn't know that. Now, they had telephones back then, but it was nothing like it is today. And Rose and Sam lived all over the place, so every time Mama T had a way of reaching out to them, most of the time they would no longer be there. So I can see why Rose may not have known. Well, Raydella, from here on out, the book is basically going to center around Raydella. She could not stand Sweet Poker. She just could not stand anything about it. She and Shondella did not get along well, was no big deal. See, Raydella was upwardly mobile. She knew after graduating high school, there was nothing Sweet Poke could possibly offer her. So she wanted to be on the next thing smoking. I believe she would have left on graduation day if Mama T had not insisted, you stay at least for that day. So what she didn't like about it, well, everything. She did not like the fact that people seemed to be perfectly content with having nothing. They seem to be okay just being able to work in the grocery store, some sort of a low-level entry at maybe a bank or a school, barely minimum wage or maybe $1 more, whatever. That just was not going to be her destiny. She knew she wanted out, and she knew she was going to have a college degree to do so. So she gets her degree in some sort of communication or broadcast journalism, and she does. So now she's working. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know what's going on. But so now she has her degree, and now she works for a bigwig television station, WKPR in Houston, Texas. She has the #1 talk show on television, daytime talk show. So In being upwardly mobile, she has the looks, she has the education, and now she actually has the job. And she meets upwardly mobile people. She dated a surgeon at one time, and she lived in Houston for 4 years. Then one day, Mama T called and told her that Justin had a bout. And so with this leukemia, he's in the hospital. If Ray Della doesn't love anything or anybody at all, she would give her life for her brother Justin. She loved him dearly. Now, Mama T kept her abreast of all of the goings on back in Sweet Poke, but Radella wasn't interested in anything, but she knew she wasn't crazy enough to tell Grandmama don't bother calling her with all of that stuff, or Mama T, as she was known. But when she got the call about her brother, she was talking to the guy she was dating at that time, some sort of a well-to-do surgeon. So, she tells him that she's going back home because of her brother being in the hospital. And he decided to go along with her to show support. Comic relief. Oh, Lord. They never did make it past the hospital. They got there. Her cousin, Tay, stole her boyfriend's wallet. Sister Shondella beats her oldest daughter right in the middle of the emergency room lobby. And if all of that wasn't bad enough, her Aunt Iola and her husband, Otis, they out there just straight fighting in the parking lot at the hospital. So when they left, they just kept going. They just went right on back to Houston. And for a while, when they got back, the guy just ghosted Radella. But eventually, he got around to telling her that they just weren't a good match. That's everything Radella had always feared, that her family, as hard as she had worked and tried to pull herself up by her bootstraps, her family would be her downfall. So she wasn't really all that surprised when she found out that he just said that was not going to work. And even if they were to stay together once they had children, his family would treat them like Radella feels like everybody treated her family. She didn't seem to be too upset about it, but it did make her double down and be careful about what she shared with people that she now knows in Houston. She had one friend, Shireen, who also worked at the television station, but she wasn't on air. And that was one of the things Radella liked about her. She was kind of, I guess we would say, a plus-size or a curvy girl. And she wore her hair in spikes and stuff. And she was always seeming to be happy-go-lucky most of the time. She wasn't in a monogamous relationship, but she didn't really seem to want for a man. So that was what, and then what I think Radella liked most about Shireen wasn't all of that. She just liked the fact that Shireen wasn't trying to get an on-air position, because Radella felt like every woman in television wanted her spot, even if they didn't work at the station. She was just that way. I wouldn't necessarily say that Radella was a narcissist, but she darn sure was a narcissist. not cis, but just narcissist, like a half a degree away from being a narcissist, because it really was all about her. And whatever was on paper, it had to match her idea of her aesthetics. She was slender, she had the right complexion, the hair, everything matched. But anyway, she goes on. Now, once a month, the station has decided to start a new segment, and it was about they were going to do a call-in show once a month that everybody could come on and talk about some sort of an issue they were having, be it personal or work-related, because everything was supposedly anonymous. One week, someone comes up with the idea of it being about adults who were abandoned by their families while they were children. The exact same thing Radella was trying so desperately to keep anyone from knowing. So when they were having the meeting, she just kept saying no. Somebody said something about, well, like, if what if your mom were to call? What if that had been you? How would things do? And Radella was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm just not going to do that. And they're like, why? And she was like, no, that's just not me. Now, I can't stop you from doing the segment. And I'll do whatever I have to do. But don't come asking me questions about how I was raised. So, wouldn't you know it, one of the callers was Rose. And Radella took the call. She didn't know until she started speaking. And right then, I don't believe she had any idea it was her mother, but it was something about that voice that registered with her. And when she gave her name, she said Rose. And Radella knew, she put two and two together. And so they ended up having to take a commercial break. And when they came back, they asked a question. And Rose was, I guess, trying to figure out how best to answer, because she knew how Radella felt about her, and she wasn't about trying to embarrass her or whatever. So she just pretended that Rose was disconnected somehow. She got out of that only to go outside. On the way to the car, she sees a lady who had on, and this was in the middle of the summertime, and this lady had on, looked like she had on everything she owned. She had on a long trench coat. She had some shades on her. She was wearing a pair of shades. And her hair was kind of like all over the place. You could tell she might have been homeless. And so she goes on. Somehow she loses the lady in the crowd. But eventually, the closer she got to her car, someone says, Radella Rollins, is that you? It turns out that it was not her mother, but it was her cousin. And Radella just looks her over. She's like, what happened to you? Because in Radella's memory, she knows that this cousin was once a beautiful person. She had everything going for her looks, her job, her whatever. The world was hers. And now, whatever. But she never tried to hide from Radella. Look, yes, I have been on drugs, but I'm off now. And thanks to your boyfriend, I have a place that I can lay my head at night, because let's talk about the current boyfriend. We're past the surgeon. Miles Jacobs was just like Radella in that he was very ambitious. But now the difference between the two of them is that Miles came from so-called good stock or great ilk. His father was an attorney. He's passed away, but he had built a law firm that Miles was supposed to take over someday. But right now, Miles is a city councilman, like first term city councilman. And his mother was a very successful realtor. His brother was doing something in the film industry. Now, he wasn't quite on Miles' level, but he definitely was climbing the rope. And Raydella loved every bit of that. But the more she saw of his family, and they seemed to love her, and she loved the fact that his mother treated her like her daughter. Am I the only one that finds that odd? I know people can love each other because I'm crazy about my mother-in-law. She's never made me feel anything less. But I don't like to think of her as my mom. Because then there you go with that old incest thing going on again. But I get it. I get it, but I don't. Anyway, she was crazy about Raydella, or so Raydella feels. And she probably was. But in as much as Miles had going for him, he was still like a lot of typical people coming up, meaning he had several women, but Raydella was the one he would be seen with in public. So when Raydella runs into her cousin, Raydella and Miles had just left a ribbon cutting ceremony for this building that her cousin was telling her about. And so he was shaking hands and signing autographs and stuff. And when he finally made it to the car, he was like, "Who was that lady you were talking to?" And she said, "Oh, just someone wanting to sign an autograph." So they go on about their day. Well, one of those women that Miles was seeing on the side ends up showing up to his apartment one night. Raydella had gone over and prepared a romantic dinner for two, and when she heard someone sticking the key in the door, she at first got up to go open the door, but then she noticed there was just like a lot of rigorously shaking and twisting and turning of the door handle. And then a female just hollers, "Miles, I know you're in there. Miles, blah, blah, blah." Raydella goes and opens the door, and she does admit that this lady is very attractive, but in a ghetto way. You know, she had on a little short miniskirt, short afro, had her boobs all spilling out over the top she was wearing. She was like, "But how can I, oh yeah, you that chick that's on the TV. Now how can I get me one of those jobs? I think I'm cute enough, blah, blah, blah." And she tells Raydella, "Look, our man is cheating on us." That's right, I saw him myself. I saw him when he went into some seedy motel, whatever. But he's not going to play me. Oh, no. He wants me to be a fool. I will be one for him. So she proceeds to pull a knife. And Raydella was going to try to book up at that lady, but when that lady pulled that knife, Raydella stepped to the side. That lady slashed his brand new leather couch all the way up. And then she walked out. Tell him I was here. That night he comes home. She's sitting up waiting for him, but she's in the dark. So he comes in. She says something that startles him for a minute. And he was like, "Why are you sitting in the dark?" And she was like, "Where have you been?" Because it was several hours after he should have been home. And he hadn't called and said anything about having to stay over for meetings or meeting clients. None of that. He just showed up when he did. He's like, "I'm not going to start that, blah, blah, blah." He turns on the light, sees his couch. At first, obviously, he thought she did it. And that's when she tells him what the lady told her. He tried to deny knowing the lady at first, but when he realized she wasn't going that way, he just decided to come out with it saying that he knew her, and that she was one of the people who would be in that building that they had just opened for the homeless people. But Radella didn't believe that. She knew that lady, although she was ghetto looking, she knew that lady pretty much had a means of taking care of herself. She wasn't homeless. So then he lies and tells her he was trying to find a way to propose to her. Because he knew darn well that's all all he had to do was propose, and she would forget any of that stuff happened. And that's basically what it was. He took her on a 3-day trip, still honeymooning her, and they're doing this, that, and the other. But when they get back to their respective jobs, she, doesn't bother him for like maybe a week or so. But one day they were talking over the phone, and she asked what time he would be getting home and stuff, and he was like, I don't know, why. She said, I was just wondering if we would get around to going to pick my ring. When can I go pick out my ring? And I guess he forgot he proposed to her. Because he got very aggravated that she would ask him about that. And he was like, is that the only thing you got to think about? And so they had this argument, but he did eventually take her, and she picked out this 8-carat gold ring, I think it was, she chose. And so she was happy. She was able to go back to work and flash that ring in everybody's face. Now, about work, Radella felt like she was still floating high on a cloud. Her man had bought her dream ring. She had one of the best jobs. And she really and truly felt like her bosses would just pretty much do whatever she said, because she was just that great of a person. She was just the one that everybody revered. But it was one man in particular. His name was Richard. She knew if she could get in his ear, he would do whatever it was she wanted him to do, without anybody else knowing that she's the one pulling the strings. Well, that did work for a while, but eventually Richard lost his cushy position because he ended up being addicted to drugs, so they had to terminate that position. Well, Radella just knew she was a shoo-in for his position because no one else dared touch her status. She was just higher than clouds, basically. It was just a matter of when they would get around to offering the position to her, but it backfired tremendously. They did call a staff meeting. Everybody goes in, and that's when they learned that Richard had been fired. So she's sitting there thinking, yeah, they're getting ready to bring her on board. She wished they had given her heads up so she could have gotten her little speech together about what she was going to say and all of that, but they didn't. Instead, they go on to announce this other lady, Dina. Can't remember Dina's last name. But they were grooming her for another market, I think somewhere in Atlanta. But due to Richard's sudden termination, they decided that she would be perfect for that position. Well, that didn't go over too well with Radella. She came unglued. So she goes and tries to get in good with Dina. She's like, hello, I'm Radella Robbins. I have the #1 talk show on TV right now. Dina said, I'm Dina. And she turns and walks off. And then Radella tries again to tell her that she was not. She said, well, I'm here now. Basically is what she said. Radella was like, No, this bitch didn't say this to me. She must have absolutely no idea who she is talking to. But it just kind of went down. She ended up being replaced by not just Dina, because like I said, Richard was Ray Della's supervisor. But now they are bringing in whoever was just a step down from Ray Della. Her name was Simone. I think she was Ray Della's receptionist or something, but she was trying to get a position there. And Ray Della had to admit that she had the chops, but Ray Della didn't. She was offended because she said that, in her opinion, Simone had not worked enough. She hadn't paid enough dues. She still should have been in the trenches. So when she got in to Ray Della's seat, Ray Della didn't take too kindly to that, but what could she do? Now, right before all of this happens, here's another thing I thought was funny, and I think it's in chapter 12, if you want to read the book. Ray Della's in her office. She comes back off of a break, and she starts hearing men talk really loud. And she goes on checking her emails and whatnot. Then the secretary calls her. She says, Ray Della, there's someone here. There's two gentlemen here, and they said they want to meet with you. And she was like, well, just take my number. Give them my number, and then I'll get with this. No, she said, they are insistent on seeing you, but now, if you want me to, I can call security. And she hears someone say, I knew her bougie wasn't going to come and see us, blah, blah, blah. She said, well, never mind. Just let me go ahead. And I'll tell them I'll be right out. She goes out. She sees her. Oh, I got ahead of myself. In that staff meeting, they had the TVs on, the monitors on. But the volume was off. Someone says, "Oh no, he's gonna run. He's gonna run into a car, run into a lady." She looks up, and she had just left the coffee machine. She was walking down through there. She looks up and sees her cousin Kevin on a high-speed chase from the police. She dropped her cup of coffee. They got it up. She goes on to the meeting all the time, not letting on that she knew who that was. And she must have did a fantastic job because no one around her seemed to notice her being so shaken up or startled because no one said anything to her. So when she gets the phone call, Kate calls and tells her that somebody is out there. She goes out there and sees the convicts' twins in there. And she contemplated taking them into their conference room, but then she thought, oh no, I can't run the risk of someone coming in here and seeing them with me. So they go outside, and they were like, we need you to get Kevin out of jail, out of prison. She said, get Kevin out of prison. They said, yeah. She said, Kevin, your brother? Yes. One of them had, they both had on some overalls, and one strap was undone. One of them had on a T-shirt that said, Fub. Now, back in, I think that was the late 90s, early 2000s, there was this fashion clothing brand called FUBU, F-U-B-U. But that last U was rubbed out, so it was Fub. Until his twin had something, and it said Carl Can. Once again, another fashionable clothing brand back then was Carl Can. And so his just said Carl Can. The letters had washed off, and she wanted to tell them so bad. Nobody dressed like that anymore. But anyway, on with the story. She said, Kevin, you're talking about the one that killed 4 people. hit an elderly lady, robbed some store, and beat somebody. She named that. She ran down everything that had just come on the news. And when she got through with all of that stuff, you know what the twins said? You want me to try to get him out of prison? Yup. It's hard for me to believe that some people can actually be that ignorant. Now, you've already potentially embarrassed her by showing up to the job. Not so much about the way they were dressed, but by them being so loud and not realizing just minutes before their brother was on television running. So she tells him, look, I report the news. I don't make laws. We know you wouldn't get him out. No, they get all mad, but they do go ahead and leave. She goes back to her office, and she has several voice messages, and one of them is from Mama T. She tells Raydella that the twins are not there and that their mother, what's that lady's name? Iola. Iola was just sick because she didn't know where they were. So Raydella is still, she's like, this is the very reason I keep a big distance between my family and myself because of things like this. She goes on back to work. Everything goes along. Well, then a few weeks later, Mama T calls Raydella and tells her that they are having a family reunion in Houston within the next couple of weeks. And she tells her that either you come to the reunion or we will just have to come to your job, because she wouldn't ever give out her home phone number or address. And Raydella knew Mama T meant business when she said that. Now, this puts Raydella in a bad way because she's afraid that if she comes clean to Niles, he'll just leave her altogether. And she felt like, I have done too much work just to let my family embarrass me and win in the end. So she had gone to church with Shireen one Sunday because she didn't even tell Shireen about, her family and her family's past or anything. She told her something. She said she believed Shireen knew she was lying. But Shireen just told her, whenever you need to talk, I'm here. Well, they go to church one Sunday where she goes with Shireen because Shireen's niece was performing a solo, and Raydella was crazy about the little girl, and she was crazy about Raydella. So they go on, and so but Raydella get in church, and she starts to do everything but listen to the preacher. And she says it's because maybe Mama T made them go to church every time the church doors were open growing up. So she really just didn't have much for church in the traditional sense. So she started doing things like balancing her checkbook and checking to make sure. And finally, Shireen just told her, put that up. We're in church, whatever. So but to Raydella, she thinks because the little girl has sang her solo, she feels like she'd already fulfilled her obligation because she did come, she did hear the little girl sing, and it was lovely. But now I just need to do something to bide my time until church is over. So on the way home, Shireen and Raydella kind of had a come to Jesus moment. This is when Shireen just lets everything go. I guess she had been letting stuff bother her so long she just couldn't say anything. So she was like, why do you always think you are so much better than other people? I notice on your job, no one is exempt from anything but you. Yes, you do look nice. Yes, you have yourself together. But that doesn't mean no one else is, and blah, 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 blah. And so Raydella goes on to tell Shireen that, do you know why I don't talk about my family? And then she goes on to tell her, she was abandoned and her grandmother raised her. Her family was dirt poor, basically, and ignorant. And that's why she never does anything or mentions them, and nobody's been to see her. And Shireen didn't hold it against her. I think what it did was make her understand more of why Raydella acted the way she did, even though she felt that did not give Raydella a cause to treat everybody else like they were, nobodies. And the only way she seemed to like you is if you had less or were less than what she was. Like I said, that's one reason she liked Shireen, because Shireen wasn't a threat to her in terms of climbing the corporate ladder. So that's what they was. So Raydella is sitting here trying to decide how much to tell Miles about her family, because the one thing she did know about Mama T, whatever Mama T said is what Mama T did. So she knew she was going to have to come clean to Miles. She just didn't know how or when. She knew it had to be within 2 weeks. And as if that wasn't enough, she also had recently learned that she was 6 weeks pregnant. When she first told Miles, she thought he would be happy, but he was anything but. She eventually finds out the reason he was not happy, number one, because they were not married, and that he was planning to pursue a mayor election, and somehow that would get in the way of, it may impede on him winning that seat. So, listen, I've been talking for just over 41 minutes now. I'm trying to decide if I want to stop it here and do a part 2, or if I want to keep going. Right now, I think I'm just going to take a break and review my notes, and I'll make the decision shortly here. So, hold tight. I'll be back one way or the other. Okay, so book connectors, I think I am going to go ahead and do a part 2 to this book, because my voice is getting even more raspy. So I think I'm just going to cut it off here for now, but please stay tuned. I'll have it up, the other half, probably later on today, because I hate to have to break my momentum, but I have to do what I have to do. So subscribers, thank you all for being subscribed. Visitors, feel free to join us. And everyone, please do not forget to like, comment respectfully, and share. All the engagement. I look so very much forward to them. And then make sure your notification bells are not only turned on, but make sure they're set to all. So you'll be notified every time I upload a video. And so in the meantime, book connectors, remember this. As long as there are books around, there is always something to read. Book connectors, until we read again, be safe out there. And God bless.